A bit loose, a bit flowy, a bit relaxed. I'm actually okay at math, but it's pink. I'm kind of scared to undo it. Hello everybody, welcome to Josie Violet Knits, or welcome back if you are a regular viewer. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm renovating my house at the moment, so we are currently in a room that has just been freshly plastered. So sorry if it's a little bit echoey in here. And yeah, there's been quite a lot going on since I last filmed a video. We pulled out a built-in and we have completely replastered this room, and it's going to be painted very soon, but at the moment it's a bit of a building site, so apologies for the slightly weird backdrop today. On this podcast we talk through the past, present and future of my knitting, so anything that I have recently finished and then anything that I'm currently working on, including this, which is a birthday present, so I'm going to be knitting on it while I'm filming today because I need to get it done because there's a deadline. And then anything that I have acquired, purchased, or has come into my life recently, I will be covering that at the end. So let's get into it. The very first thing that I want to talk about, and this is my finished object for this episode, is this polo t-shirt. It is knit in Drops Bell. It is 2x2 broken rib. And I'm not telling you what the pattern is because I self-drafted this. I had this idea, and I've not even talked about this here on YouTube because I think when I filmed my last video, I hadn't even had the idea yet. And then I just really quickly had the idea and then just started knitting it, and now it's finished. To basically knit this top, I've been pinning a lot of polo tops, kind of summery, a bit loose, a bit flowy, a bit relaxed, but I still wanted it to have a bit of structure in the button band and the collar. And I also wanted I'm just really obsessed with double folded stockinette hems and like cuffs, and basically anywhere that I can put a double folded stockinette hem, I will put it. And so that is what I wanted, and I just couldn't find any patterns that had all of those elements. I knew that I wanted some kind of vertical stripe, and I wasn't quite sure at first whether I wanted lace. You know, there's a lot of the pontel kind of designs going around lately that have the vertical pontel lines, and I like that. But I just didn't really fancy doing lace. So I tried out a few different stitch patterns and I came across the 2x2 broken rib, and I just felt like it was a good combination of relatively easy to knit, but it has quite an impact in terms of the look of it. And it had that vertical stripe that I was going for. So I was quite excited once I'd done a swatch in the Drops Bell and I knew that I wanted to do the 2x2 broken rib. I did try a 1x1 broken rib, but it was just not giving I kind of wanted a bit of a space between each of the lines so that it would be quite obvious. And I just liked the way the 2x2 rib looked. And also it was easier to knit because you don't have to move from knit to purl as often. The other good thing about the 2x2 broken rib is it's broken because every other round or row, you're just doing a plain stockinette round. So even though it is ribbing all over, you're actually only knitting ribbing every other round or row, depending whether you're knitting flat or in the round. So that made the whole thing a lot easier and a lot more fun to knit, because I don't know if I would ever really knit like a fully ribbed garment. I think it would just be a bit of a mission. So once I knew kind of roughly what I wanted, I had to think about how I was actually going to knit it. This is my first time self-drafting a garment. I have self-drafted a scarf before, but I feel like a scarf is a lot simpler because it's just a 2D flat shape, whereas a garment is 3D, so that makes it all a lot more complicated. And there was a lot of maths involved. In February, I actually had attended a workshop that the Knit Purl Girl was hosting at Unravel Festival in Farnham, which is kind of near where I live in the UK. And that was just all about maths for knitters, kind of figuring out how to apply maths to your designs, whether it's your own design or kind of adapting other people's patterns to fit your body a bit better. So that was a really, really informative course or workshop. And it was very, very useful for kind of just giving me the confidence to give it a go. I think as I only started knitting in January 2025, I still would say I'm a relatively new knitter. So the thought of self-drafting had been quite intimidating to me. I learned so much from knitting patterns. I feel like knitting patterns is the best way as a beginner to understand garment construction and getting your head around all the different types of constructions. There's so many different shoulder constructions, and kind of just understanding the 3D shape of a garment. I feel like knitting patterns is the best way to do that. I feel like I was kind of getting to the point where I've knit enough patterns now that I kind of roughly understand how they work. You know, usually you start with the back, then do like left front, right front. Obviously, depending on what you're doing, you might start in the round. But I feel like I have like a rough idea of that. So I felt like I was maybe ready to go to the next stage of actually trying to self-draft my own thing. But once I came up to figuring that out, there was just a lot of numbers you have to figure out. You know, obviously, first of all, you want to do the bust circumference. How much positive ease do you want based on your own body? How low do you want the armhole to be? Where do you want the neck to fall? Like, where do you want the top of the neck to be? How wide do you want the neck to be? How long do you want the body? And then I also added short rows to the sleeves. So that was quite a lot of calculation as well. Also, like, how far do you want the shoulder to be? Like, do you want it to be a drop shoulder? Do you want it to be set in sleeve? Figuring out exactly where you want that to be. So there's so much maths that goes into this, and I don't think I really registered until I did it myself, like how much maths brain was going to be needed for this. I always just had this feeling that I wasn't very good at maths, but I'm starting to try and unpack that a bit lately and maybe just realize that I'm actually okay at maths, and like you don't have to be some sort of like mathematical genius to figure out at least knitting maths. A lot of it is times tables, percentages, and you know, just using the stitch gauge and the row gauge to calculate the number of stitches. The good thing about knitting maths is if you're off by a few stitches, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be like completely perfect. A lot of the times you have to round up or round down. And that kind of relaxes me a bit as well, of realizing like, as long as it's kind of roughly where you want it to be, you can be off by a little bit of a few stitches, and that's fine. So all of that is to say, this has been quite a revelation to me of being able to design my own things and having an idea and actually being able to achieve it. I was very happy with it. That being said, there is a lot of things I want to change about this, and I do have an idea for a long sleeve version that would have a bit more tailoring on the cuff, kind of like a double folded or double knitting cuff with a button band similar to the collar, but like in double knitting. And so it would be kind of more of a tailored long sleeve polo. And I really want to knit that in I have Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the shade Copper that I originally bought for knitting the Seashore skirt by Kurta Vikika. I have since kind of gone off the idea of knitting the Seashore skirt. I don't know why. I was really into it when I first started it, but I just haven't been wanting to pick that project up. And I've got this pure silk sitting around, so I think I'm just going to use it for this top. Maybe not unravel my whips right away, but I'll just use the balls that I have left, and then I'll just, I don't know, I have a lot of balls of this pure silk, so I want to use it for my second sample. And I say second sample because I would maybe like to release this as a pattern at some point. I know that there's so much more maths that goes into making a pattern versus just making something for yourself, because obviously you have to grade it and figure out all the sizes and, you know, test knitting and all of that stuff, tech editing, all of that business. So I don't think there's going to be a pattern coming anytime soon, as I'm sort of navigating how to even consider releasing a pattern. But just putting it out there that at some point, maybe in the future, this could become a pattern once I've figured out that whole process. But I want to fix a few things, and that is another reason why I want to do a second draft. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but I kind of messed up the when I was calculating the repeat. The 2x2 broken rib is a 4-row repeat, but then you have to plus 2 in order for it to be equal on either side. And when I just didn't really register that as I was calculating it, and that meant that one side was a bit different to the other. Like one side started with the knits and then it ended with the pearls, or ended with the garter. Basically, it wasn't symmetrical, which when I came to joining at the front became a bit of an issue because the stitch pattern wasn't lining up as I thought it would. Because I know now what I did wrong, but I just wasn't thinking ahead enough. And by the time I got to that point, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna knit a few two together and make it line up. As a result, it has become a little bit strange here. I'll see if I can set a photo to show it a bit better. But it doesn't look very neat where the double knit button band joins and where it joined in the round. I also somehow had an extra row of knit stitches here. So when I've joined in the round, the pattern went a bit funny and then I had to kind of go back and fix it. I now know why that has happened. So I want to fix that obviously for a second sample. And so that was just one thing that went a bit wrong. Another thing was the top button hole was just a bit too high. And I don't know, I think I just kind of didn't register that I needed to space them out a bit more and bring it down a little bit and sort of start the buttonhole a bit lower than I did. So that was a bit annoying. I feel like it's not, to be honest, I don't think many people would notice, especially because the buttons I've chosen are very like similar to the colour of the yarn. But I just noticed it. I noticed that it's a little bit too high and it's annoying me. So I'm going to bring it down for the second sample. I also feel like the collar needs to be a bit bigger. I just got really bored. I was knitting this when I was on holiday in Italy and I wanted to get it finished for my holiday. I didn't end up getting it finished for my holiday, but the double knit collar, there are a lot of stitches on here because it is double knitting and it's going all the way around. So it was taking ages and I was just checking it every 2 seconds and I was just getting annoyed that it wasn't like finishing quicker so that I could get on to finishing the rest of the top. So I think realistically, I probably should have knitted it a bit longer. So yeah, that's another thing I would slightly tweak, but that's not a huge deal. Another thing I want to change is the drop of the armhole. It's just a little bit too low. I like how wide the sleeves are, but I feel like it could just be maybe just a centimetre less wide on the sleeves and maybe 1 or 2 centimetres shorter on the armhole. And I think that will just, I don't know, it's just a little bit baggy here, which I just feel like if it just came here, it would be a little bit better. But when your arms are down, it's not that noticeable. It's just, I don't know, it's just something I feel like could just be a tiny bit better if it was just a little bit shorter. But I do like the oversizedness of the sleeves, and I like how, I think it's because of the double folded cuffs that they kind of stick out and they don't flap down. I kind of like that they're quite structured. I feel like that kind of counteracts the flowiness of the rest of the top. And yeah, I do like how the sleeves are looking. I just feel like they need to be just a tiny bit smaller and then they'll be perfect. And then also, yes, obviously a long sleeve version will be interesting. And I'm very intrigued to see how it works up in the pure silk. I will have to hold it double to get gauge. I haven't gauge swatched for it yet, so I need to just check that holding the pure silk double will kind of equate to the drop spell held single. This is knit on 4.5mm needles, so I feel like usually when I finish a project, I'm like, okay, that's done. I can stop thinking about that now, put that down, don't have to think about that again, move on to the next thing. But because I want to do a second sample, I feel like my head is very much still in this project. I don't really feel like it's fully finished. And yeah, even like the buttons that I've used, I think they're too small. So I've actually ordered some new buttons. I think I'm going to sew on some bigger buttons because I'm having a little bit of an issue with it sometimes undoing when I button it up. I'll just quickly show you what it looks like buttoned as well. So here's what it looks like buttoned. I like it buttoned as well. I think I would mainly have it unbuttoned when I'm wearing it, but it's kind of cute to have it buttoned now and then. So that's my top. Let me know if you have any names, ideas as well. I've considering calling it the plaster top just because of the plaster that's surrounding me, but I don't know if I want to be reminded of that in the future. So I don't know, I was knitting it on holiday, so something like the sun cream top, or I don't know, something. I feel like the stitch pattern kind of looks like pebbles or sea foam or something like that. I want something a bit summery. So if you have any ideas for names, let me know. I always find it quite fun when people suggest names based on what they think it looks like. And so sorry that my colour palette is a bit samey today because the whip that I'm talking about is knit in exactly the same colour. But this is a birthday present for my mum. This is the Petite Knit Weekend Slipover V-neck. If you've been following my channel for a long time, you will know that I have already knit this. This was actually the second thing that I ever knit for myself. I knit this back in February 2025. So I know this pattern well, and I felt like it was probably a good idea when I'm knitting for other people. I don't want anything too stressful, so I knew that I could knit this pretty quickly. I think last time I knit this in a week because it is on 5.5mm needles, and it's just stockinette in the round now, the point that I'm at. So you start off knitting the back panel, you add short rows into the back panel to slightly shape the back. It kind of goes up in like a little curve at the back here. Once you have knit the back panel down to the bottom of the armhole, you do little increases for the armhole, and then you pick up for the left and the right shoulder. So once you pick up for the left and the right, you do increases to shape the V-neck, and then you do the same on the other side. And then eventually you join the back and the left and the right in the round, and you knit in the round all the way down. And then once you've done that, then you do the pick up around the armholes for the ribbing. And then you also pick up around the V collar, and you do, to shape the little V thing, you do a center double decrease, which I remember when I first did that, because I was so new to knitting, I felt like I'd unlocked like some sort of magic secret. I was so proud of myself for doing a center double decrease. So I'm quite looking forward to doing them again, seeing if I can still do them. And that's just a really fun way to shape the V-neck. And it just looks really nice, and it's just a nice, easy, chilled knit. It is on 5.5mm needles, and the yarn that I'm using for this is actually Drops Nepal, so another Drops yarn that I'm using. I feel like I haven't used Drops in a while, and now I'm suddenly just using it all the time. But I used Drops from Nepal on my very first sweater that I ever made, which was the Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller. So this whole project feels very familiar to me, and it's kind of reminding me of some of the very first projects that I ever made. So it's been quite nice to just go back to some familiar ground, and I think after the brain mathsiness of this top, it's kind of been nice just to go back to a more familiar, easy petite knit pattern, and that's been quite fun. And yeah, another thing I discovered when I was knitting this was I was knitting at one of my friend's house, and I forgot to bring another cable, and I was joining, I was picking up for the left shoulder, and I didn't have another cable with me. And then I just suddenly realized that if you're knitting on a big enough circular needle, you can just pick up with your back stitches still on your cable. You can just pick up, start knitting, and then you can also then pick up on the right side, start knitting, keeping the left and the back on the cable. And then once you've done, as long as you do the left first, then the right, then you can just join in the round, and it's all already on the same cable. I don't know if that makes sense, because I didn't quite understand how that worked, but then I just did it. because out of necessity, I just didn't have a cable with me. And it's genius because you don't use up all of your cables in your kit and you don't have to transfer anything anywhere. It's just already all on the cable. So that is a weird little thing I've discovered. I don't know if any of you have done that before, but maybe if you're doing a project like this where you have the back and then the left side and the right side, then you join in the round. If you have a big enough cable, I think this is just an 80 centimeter cable, you can just use one cable, because when you're knitting flat, you just keep the other stitches like elsewhere on the cable and it all just somehow works. And then now, yeah, so I'm just knitting in the round, and I actually miss just knitting stockinette in the round. I feel like it's been a while since I've knit just plain stockinette in the round, and actually I just love it because I can knit all the time. I don't have to think about it. I can knit anywhere and don't have to be looking at a pattern. And yeah, I'm very much thoroughly enjoying this. My mum does know that I'm knitting this for her, so if she does happen to see this video, hopefully I'm not spoiling anything too much, but it is her birthday. Well, her birthday is in about a week, but we're actually seeing her sooner than that for her birthday. So we'll see if I actually get this done in time. I'm really hoping that I will. I don't have that much further to go, so I think I'll be okay. And as I said, it's on 5.5mm needles, so it is going pretty quickly. I have quite a few other whips, things that I've spoken about before, but to be honest, I haven't been working on them that much because I've just been working mainly on this top. So I won't go into those in this episode, but rest assured, they're still coming along. They're just sort of on pause at the moment. So let's get on to acquisitions. This is something that was very kindly gifted to me from 314, which is a Lithuanian fashion brand. And the lovely lady who runs that brand, she became a knitter, and she basically was like, I just want to use my equipment and my ability to make clothes to create project bags. This is not sponsored, but these were gifted to me, so just please bear that in mind. But to be honest, I think this is totally worth the money. They are beautifully made. They are quilted and there's so many cute designs. I picked this little porcelain one because I've actually been wanting to make the porcelain sweater in pink and beige for ages. That's been like on my long-term list of things I wanted to do. So when I saw this porcelain bag, kind of porcelain style, like the kind of thing you would see on a porcelain vase or whatever, but it's pink and it's just so cute. And it has a drawstring, which is obviously perfect because you don't want a zip getting in the way of your project. And then it has this little strap so you can just use it as a bag. It also has a front pocket as well. And then inside it has like little internal pouches as well. So I've been finding it quite useful to carry around like my colour work projects where I have lots of different balls of yarn. That's been quite nice. And yeah, I just love it. It just makes me so happy. It's just so cute. And I also got a little matching needle case. And I've got all my needles in here now. I've moved it over. I think I need to get like a little, maybe some sort of carrier thing just to carry. I find myself with lots of loose cables, which I've kind of just tucked in there for now, but I think I need some sort of system for just keeping my cables a little bit more organized. But aside from that, I am very much loving this. I can fit pretty much everything I need. All of my needles, scissors, and my stitch markers and everything. And it just flops over like that. And yeah, this is just my new favorite thing. I love it. It is adding to my growing collection of project bags. As I just get more and more whips, I'm needing more and more project bags. So it's been nice to be able to put some projects in here instead of just having it in like an old random tote bag or whatever. And then in here is another thing I wanted to talk about, which is my knitting friend Kirsty. I'll put her Instagram if you want to go follow her. Has a lot of yarn dyeing materials. So I went around her house the other week and she invited us round and we got some skeins of sock yarn and we basically just had fun dyeing some yarn. So these are kind of my little test ones that I did. This one, I started off, I was thinking grey with like colourful speckles. To be honest, it kind of just looks like it got lost in the wash, like it's gone a bit of a weird grey, but that's fine. This was just sort of a test one, and I'm sure I'll find some use for it eventually. I was thinking it would look like the Isagaran tweed and confetti, but it kind of just looks like it got mixed up. It looks like something that used to be white that got mixed up in the coloured wash. But then I did this, which was much more successful, which was, I think this was a red colour. So I did like a red base and then I added some red sprinkles and it kind of turned out into like a pinky red colour. So then I used that same pinky red, but I diluted it with a lot more water. And then that created this very cool pink. I'm kind of scared to undo it because I'm not sure if I know how to do it back up. Kirsty's a lot better at scanning these things than I am. But I don't know if you can see there's like a bit of a yellow bit in there. Yeah, I don't actually know how to do this back up. I'm sure it's a very simple method, but anyway. So yeah, that is my main one that I did. I think I'm going to wind this up pretty soon and put it into a cake because I don't trust myself to keep this secure. But it has a lovely pink, yellow, lots of stuff going on, sprinkled some bright red on the end as well. So that was just so fun. I feel like I'm definitely not going to get into dyeing yarn like properly because it is so messy and you have to have so much equipment and space. And at the moment, there's so much chaos in my house going on anyway that I just don't think I can get into it. But thankfully, I have a friend nearby who is willing to have a bit of chaos in one of the rooms of her house. And she has all the equipment there. So I might go do that at some point again, who knows. But it was a very fun experience. We took all the safety precautions, we were wearing masks and everything. But yeah, that was just very fun. And I would like to get back into sock knitting at some point. I feel like I've fallen off the sock knitting train. I still haven't finished the second petal drop sock. I have knit one sock in my whole knitting life. I think I need to finish my second petal drop sock and then maybe I can use this skein to knit something a bit wacky with this yarn because that would be very fun to knit something with some yarn that you have dyed yourself. So that is my other little, I guess it's an acquisition, but I'm trying to not buy yarn at the moment, but obviously I couldn't turn down the prospect of just doing a little bit of yarn dyeing with my friends. So I feel like this is probably one of the rare times where I'm actually having a new yarn in my stash, probably for a while now, especially because I have no storage and my house is just like mad. So yeah, that was my little yarn dyeing experiment. That is everything I had to share with you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you're knitting at the moment. I would love to hear it. And I will see you again. Maybe the walls will be painted next time I film a video. Maybe they won't. But yeah, thank you for joining me and I will see you again very soon.